I am Angie, your host, and today we are going to take a look at the fabrics we created yesterday. So, yesterday we created fabrics using the violet and the orange, and we created tones of them by mixing in some gray. So, let me know if you have any questions. Please put them in the comments or in the chat. And if you're watching this on the live stream, if you have any questions about what we do today, you can always put those in the chat and I will answer them. So as I said, we're going to take a look at the fabrics we created yesterday, which we created some tones of the orange and violet by adding varying amounts of gray. So let me switch over to the other camera and we will take a look at what we created yesterday. And we're going to be comparing them to the original color and to the tints that we created last week. So let's do that. So, okay, here we are at the overhead camera, and you see here on the table the pieces of fabrics that we created. So we're going to start at the top. The top one is the pure orange. So that's the color from the manufacturer, and it's called strong orange. It was not diluted in any fashion, so straight orange with the formula that I use is 1 cup of water and 1 teaspoon of dye. Or if I make less than a full batch, I adjust the proportions accordingly. So the top one is straight orange. And the second one is one that we created last week, and it's a dilution. It's 2 parts orange, what is was 4 tablespoons of orange and 2 tablespoons of yellow. So it's not as much of a difference in color as I'd like. There is some difference, but not as much. Go ahead and say hi in the chat for me, if you will. And in case you missed the first part of it, we are comparing the original color, which is the top portion. This second one is the first dilution of a tint that we created last week. Not as much of a difference as I wanted. This third one is the orange, and it was 4 tablespoons of orange and 4 tablespoons of water. So you can see that it's much lighter than the original and the other two. I wish there was more of a difference between them, but that's what we got. So yesterday we created some pieces and we added gray to the mixture. So this one is gray and orange in equal parts. So I did 4 tablespoons of orange and 4 tablespoons of gray. And this is what we came up with. And there is a big difference between the original and this one. So you can see how much duller this color is. And that's what the gray does to the colors. It tones down the intensity, and that's why they call them tones when you add gray. So like I said yesterday, it's sort of like when you have a light that's on a dimmer switch and you turn down the light. Good morning, Virginia. Thanks for being here. It's good to see you. Let me know if you have any questions, okay? So, as I was saying, it's sort of like when you have a light on a dimmer switch and you turn it down a bit. So that's what we did by adding gray to this. So that's equal parts gray. And you can still see that it leans leans orange. So it didn't change the color itself. It just toned it down a bit. And now this last one, let me put this up against the original color. And you can see there's a huge difference there. Okay? So this is the original orange, and this is the orange with gray. This is, I did 2, I think it's kind of hard to remember from day to day, 2 tablespoons of orange and 4 tablespoons of gray. So that really dimmed down the value or the intensity of this color. So it's much duller, and it's starting to kind of shift the color itself from orange to something else, but it's still an orange. So that's what we have. Let me put these all back together so you can see them again once more. So our top is original orange. The one underneath it has been slightly diluted. And the third one is about half orange and half water. So there's quite a bit of difference between the first and the third. Not as much difference between the first and the second one. The fourth one is our orange with 50% orange and 50% gray. And this last one, we did 2 tablespoons of orange and 4 of gray. So there's twice as much gray as there is orange, and there's a big difference between these two. So I was quite pleased with the way the tones came out. And one thing I like about working with gray to tone down a color, it doesn't add any other colors to it. If you use black, black is made up of multiple colors, so the black dye has multiple colors in it. And no matter which black you use, it has a tendency to lean towards some other color. So your black may have a red undertone, or it may have a green undertone or a blue undertone, and that's going to affect the final color that you get when you dye your fabric. With grays, you don't have that. But we will explore black in a few weeks. And I'm going to say before I forget, we won't be having a live stream for the next 2 weeks because I will be out of town. So our next available live stream will be the 15th of April. So now I'm going to bring out the purples. And we're going to see something a little different with these. I was surprised. So this is the original purple with no dilution, no anything. So this is the first value that we created, or tint that we created by adding 2 parts purple to 1 part water. Not as much difference as I had wanted. And this is the third one. Again, not as much difference as I wanted. I was surprised. So this was equal parts violet, purple, and water. So I thought it would be a bigger difference there. And I don't know why that is. I guess some colors are just stronger and they need more dilution. That's the only thing I can think of. And from what I'm seeing on the camera, on my monitor, I don't really see much difference. In real life, it's a little bit more than what's showing on the monitor, but I was a little bit disappointed it wasn't more. But let's take a look at the tones that we created. So this is the original purple up top, and this is the first tone with equal parts purple and gray. So I see someone new just popped in. Go ahead and say hi in the chat for me. So there's a big difference there. Not as dramatic of a difference as it was with the orange, but there's still a big difference. And all I can say, I think it's the violet dye is a lot stronger. And now let's take a look at the second tint or tone. And you can see there's a difference there. Definitely a difference. But again, not as dramatic as the orange. And I can't say I've ever worked with the purple or the violet because it is not one of my favorite colors. So I was a little bit surprised that the change wasn't as dramatic, because you could see it yesterday when I was mixing the dyes. You could see it with the orange, but it was a lot more difficult to see with the violet here. So all I can assume is this color is a lot stronger than the orange. So it's going to take more of, if you're working with the tones, it's going to take adding more water to get a bigger shift. And the same thing with the gray. It's going to take adding more gray to get a bigger shift from the original color. So it's a real interesting exercise. And I like doing these because I learn things about the colors, because now that I know that it would take more. Hi, Pat. You like those tones? Did you see the orange, or would you like me to put the orange ones back up there? So doing exercises like this is really helpful, because let's say if I did want to work with violet for some reason, even though it's not my favorite color, and I wanted to have a bigger range. Having done exercises like this, I now know that it would take more gray to give me that bigger shift than I have right now. And by making these samples like this, it really gives you a lot of information. And this is actually similar to a project that I did when I took Jane Dunawall's master program. Okay, Pat, I'll show those back in a minute, okay? We each had to do a project for the end of the course, and my project was to mix up colors with varying amounts of gray and to see what would happen to the color. And so it was a very interesting exercise, and I learned quite a bit from that. I never made it to the violet range, so I didn't realize that this would be like that. But I may still go back and finish that project. So I'm going to go back to the camera and show Pat what the oranges look like. Okay, Pat, so here we have our original color. And these are our tints from last week. Not as dramatic as we would like, but they're there. You can see the difference. And this is the lightest tint. So there's a shift. Not a very dramatic shift. And here's the first tone that was created by adding 50% gray to the dye. So it was equal parts of gray and orange. And this is the last tone that we did yesterday, where it was 2 tablespoons of dye to 4 tablespoons of orange, or 2 tablespoons of orange to 4 tablespoons of gray dye. So there was a much more dramatic shift in the oranges than there were in the purples. So I'll put these side by side on the table so you can see them. So which one do you guys like best? Let me know in the comments or the chat which one you like best, the orange or the violet. And as I was saying, Pat, there won't be a live stream for the next 2 weeks. The next one will be the 15th of April. And at that time, we're going to take these same colors. We might be getting tired of these colors, but I want to show you guys how things look when you make one change. So we're going to be taking these same colors and we're going to mix them with the black to see how the color changes. I'm not sure which black yet. I do have about 3 or 4 blacks, I think, but each one of them have a slight undertone. I think one has a red undertone and one has a blue and one has a green undertone. So I have to think about which one that I want to use, and I may not use the same one. I'm not sure if I'll use the same one with each of the orange and the violet. I think with the orange, it might be best if I use one with a red undertone, because orange has red in it. And with the violet, it might be best to use one with a blue undertone. So I think if I use the other ones, it might start to muddy the color. So for instance, if I use a black with the orange that has a blue undertone to it, since blue and orange are complementary colors, it might start to muddy the orange. And the same thing with the violet. If I use one that has a green undertone, since violet has red in it and green is the complementary color of the red, it might start to muddy the colors a bit. So I'll have to think about that, but I've got 2 weeks to do it. So we won't be live streaming for 2 weeks, and I'll be in Florida at a conference and visiting friends. And Virginia says she's not a lover of the of orange, but she could see herself using the ones with gray added. And that's the thing, Virginia. I like orange. I don't like it in its brightest state like this. So I would probably never use that orange straight out of the bottle. I would add some gray to it to tone it down because it just, I don't know, the other is just so in your face and it's too intense for me. But adding just a little bit of gray still keeps it orange, but it to me makes it a more usable color. So you use all the violets, huh? It's sometimes surprising the colors we think we might not use, and you just never know. Oh, thank Pat. I'll miss you guys too, but hopefully I'll have. I'm gonna try before I leave. I leave on Tuesday. Maybe have a little video to pop up on the channel before I leave, but we'll see. Got to get back to working on my taxes today. Yeah, Virginia. That's what I like about learning the color theory because actually when I first started with the surface design, I really didn't like a lot of color, and that's because most of the color I seen was it is Crayola format, like right out of a Crayola box, and that's just too much for me. I like it when it's toned down a bit. So working with these grays, and it'll be interesting to see how the blacks come out because I've never actually used a black dye, and that's mainly because of the undertones that it had, and I didn't want to have to figure out which ones I would need to get what I wanted because the undertones it's gonna shift things a bit and you never really know how it's going to shift. But that's really what we have today. Short stream like Wednesdays normally are. But I hope you guys are finding this helpful. And as I said, when we come back in 2 weeks, we'll work with black with these same two colors. And then that way we'll be able to see a range of how the color changes when you dilute it with water and make it a lighter color, and how it changes when you add some gray versus how it's going to change when you add some black. And I hope this is all helpful for you, and it would help you when it comes to choosing colors for your project. Yeah, it's nice to learn something new, isn't it, Virginia? And that's why I do these because I like learning something new and I like sharing what I learned with other people. So I really appreciate you guys being here and thanks for coming. And I hope to see you guys in person sometime again soon. So take care and I'll see you on a live stream in 2 weeks. Bye.